Great. Welcome to June's Breakthrough Series put on by Idaho Partners for Good. Today, our guest speaker is Eric Stevens. He is a new tribe member to Idaho Partners for Good, which is exciting for us. He has been in the engineering field and really in the technology field for the last 20 years, really more in the electrical engineering side. However, over the last year, he's really gotten into cybersecurity. So he is quite a newbie himself, but he has learned a lot and he's ready to share a lot of information with us who are the newbies to cybersecurity. We view cybersecurity as a way that organizations can become more resilient because really by having more cybersecurity infrastructure in place, you really are making yourself and your nonprofit organization or the organization that you are with more resilient. So I am going to turn it over to Eric Stevens.
All right, thank you, Kai. Very happy to be here. As Kai said, my name's Eric Stevens, and I'm going to be giving you a presentation on cybersecurity resilience for new people. All right, so first question though is, who is this guy? You may remember me from I'm the former world record holder for hopping a mile on a hippity hop. Some people, they look back on their glory days in high school football, whereas I look back on the days that I made glory hopping on a giant ball with a handle. No, seriously, who am I round two? I'm a Boise State University electrical engineering graduate. I've spent 20 years mostly in high volume manufacturing of semiconductor and test engineering, design validation, and product engineering. About a year ago, I decided to start delving into cybersecurity, and I've worked full-time and part-time at the Institute for Pervasive Cybersecurity as a Cyberdome lead, helping bring that project up, as well as, just learning about cybersecurity in general. So learning objectives. So the way that this presentation is going to go is we'll start out talking about what is cybersecurity. Then we'll, because when I started in cybersecurity, this was always a big thing, was like, how do we get new people in? Why don't people understand it? What does it mean to them? And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about, yeah, what is it? What does it mean to the lay person? What did it mean to me when I started? And so I think that's a good place to start. And then we'll start talking about some things that you can start doing today for yourself personally and for your organization. And we'll mix in a little resilience. But as Kai said, in a certain sense, just trying to improve your cybersecurity hygiene will help you more resilient all on its own. Okay, so what is cybersecurity? I would actually reckon that you probably know more about this than you think. And so at the beginning of this presentation, we're going to go play some games and do little exercises that I hope will demonstrate this to you. Like I said early on, starting in cybersecurity, it was, why doesn't the layperson understand it and why don't they care? And I kind of, as I noodled on this, I realized that I feel like there was two reasons. And one is, it's just our approach to cybersecurity, that we are perceiving it correctly. We think about it differently than other security issues. And that in some ways, I feel like the world has trained us to have that perception. So if we can break through that, I think all of us can start thinking like a cybersecurity professional. So before we really delve into the games, first question I want to ask you is, what things are a risk? Or what things should you be worried about in the cyber world that present a risk to you?
I would say my cell phone and my laptop.
Those are very good answers. The cell phone is always top of my list. I like to say, when I have to be honest, this question's in here because in one of my previous presentations, somebody asked that. And I really, first thought in my head is anything that connects to the internet, really. I mean, if it's connecting to the internet, it's presenting a problem. And that's not to say that things that don't connect to the internet also can't present you a problem, but really, those are the big ones. I also think about printers. Printers are really dangerous because usually they're connected to the internet, either internally or externally, and nobody thinks about hacking them except for bad people, right? So, yeah, printers is a fun subject. It's fun to go look in the, go Google printer hacks of the past. Okay, what type of things do you think you should be protecting? And honestly, this one to me is a no-brainer. What things should you protect? Anything that's important to you. Now, admittedly, I think sometimes people protect things that they shouldn't. So I think it's a useful exercise to really consider, should I be protecting this or not? But at the end of the day, what things are at a risk? Pretty much anything connected to the internet. And what things should I be protecting? Anything I care about. All right, on to the games. So what is security? Again, I think you understand this more than you would think. And the question I like to ask people is, secure this house. What type of things would you do to secure a house?
Lock it.
Yep, locks are a good one. If you've recently had anyone who's recently had a break-in often will think about, maybe I can get better locks, maybe I can get stronger locks, maybe I can get interior metal, metal doors or metal reinforcement.
A fence or gate around your house?
Yep, fences always come first to mind for me. They can do, depending on which fence you get, they can do more than keep children off your lawn. They can keep bad guys. I also then, like to jump to, well, what if I electrify that fence? That actually might make it a little more secure. Windows, I always feel like windows are incredibly weak, but they do have reinforced and bulletproof glass. I can put bars over my windows. Any other things? Concepts?
Video cameras.
Oh yeah, video cameras. Guard dogs.
Motion detector lights.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That way your lights don't stay on all night and keep you awake only when somebody bad shows up. They also provide you with an alert.
So here in Idaho, Eric, especially in our rural communities, you have your guard geese.
Oh, that's true. I should have thought of that one because I grew up on a farm where we did have guard geese. Yes. So yeah, you've got a lot of things. And so I would ask, so after all, we've listed a lot of good things. Why wouldn't you do some of these things though?
Cost.
Cost is a big one. Sometimes I like to think
Or like maintenance. I don't choose geese or dogs because that's like more work for me.
Exactly. Time is one. Also, some of them present a danger to you. The geese on our farm used to attack us all the time, they're not very discriminatory. So anyways, there's a lot of factors that go into this. You can have ideas, but then you talk yourself out of them because there's one of the things I say, this is general of all engineering, but especially in cybersecurity, there's an upside and a downside to everything you're doing. Okay, so what about securing this house? Do you notice anything different about it? Probably rich people live here because rich people like windows. And don't get me wrong, I like windows too, but they really do crack me up because they're a major security risk, right? They serve the additional function of letting the criminals know what they could potentially steal. But you've now basically got this much bigger, much more expensive house, in some ways much weaker because of those windows. What might you do differently to protect this house or consider?
The security guards.
Yeah, you definitely probably are thinking more about security guards.
Probably have a more advanced security system.
Yep, you might do that. I also start thinking to get exotic, such as put it on a mountaintop, move its location to where it's hard to find. Then again, there's the downside that how do I get electricity and manage sewer up there? But then again, I might save some money on security guards. To me, another thing that this house represents in terms of security is, when borrowing the real exotic of putting on a mountaintop is it brings up the importance of location, right? This isn't the type of house that you're going to go put in a bad part of town. right? It's going to be one of your first thoughts. What about if I asked you to hide a safe in a house?
Where would I put it?
Yeah.
I would say probably the most inconspicuous place possible.
All right, that's good. Yeah, I start thinking of things like basements, roofs. I think of places like crawl spaces. I think keep it away from windows. I don't need people knowing that. I think of garages, but then I think, geez, my garage door is one of the easier doors to get through. But once again, I'm really demonstrating that the second I ask you, where would you hide a safe? You already start taking security concerns or start thinking through the security concerns. So like one of them I liked was somebody had previously brought up, I might keep it in my bedroom, but I certainly wouldn't keep it in my kids' bedrooms. And why wouldn't I keep it in the kids' bedrooms? Well, two reasons. One, the kids might tell somebody. And two, well, to be honest, I don't want my safe being broken into, but the last place I want a criminal actually going around is where my kids might be. So one last question on the safe is, does it matter what's in the safe? Does that change where you might place the safe?
Yes, for me it would.
Yeah, I think for most of it does. For most of us, it does, right? I've got a safe that's pretty easy for anybody to see, but all it's got is really, to be honest, documents that I just don't want to get burned up in a fire. I don't really care if people see it's there. Then again, if I was hiding thousands of dollars, I might actually care about placing that someplace else. So other things you start thinking about, you have a safe, so you've got some idea of where you want to put it, but how do you get into that safe? Where do you put that key? So a very common place that people put keys are around their neck, on their keychain. But effectively, when you take a key and you start carrying it around on your person, what are you guarding that key with?
Your own comfort as far as being able to protect the key. So, you know, if you're a big buff guy who knows how to do everything martial arts, then probably not a bad place. But for the rest of us,
right? I mean, it's a good point. You're effectively guarding that key with yourself. Although you do bring up a really good point that keeping the key with yourself does provide you with a little bit of what do you want to say? A sense of comfort that you're not going to lose it, that you know where it's at, and that is actually a valuable thing, right? Don't discount that. You know, when you get into cybersecurity, don't create more stress for yourself. Sometimes it's worth it to invest in what makes you feel better. But at the end of the day, securing a key with your person is securing with your person and all of the associated protections that come with that, right? And why wouldn't somebody want to take that key from you? As Blossom said, it might be because, yeah, you know martial arts or you're a big tough guy and you look intimidating. It might be because there's the social bubble aspect where we don't like to get close to somebody. Yes, I might want to take that key from you, but that could get me in trouble, right? There might be another big tough guy or security around there. There's fear of prosecution. So in a certain sense, when I say, oh, you're securing a key with your person, it's not just your person, it's the environment. Again, walking around with a key to a safe in Boise, Idaho is going to be very different than walking around with that same key in a really bad place or bad part of town in Russia where everybody knows you're a tourist. Okay, so, oops, wrong button. So what have we learned here? What we've essentially learned is that things change based on a lot of things, right? I like to call it the who, what, where, when, and why of security, right? What I'm protecting changes how I'm going to protect it. Where I place that thing is going to change how I protect it. Who wants that thing or who knows about it is going to change. And at any moment that I change one of these variables, I've also changed, you know, what people like to call your security posture. Another thing we learned is And for entrepreneurs, very, I don't know, say that they're very familiar with this concept, PTM, people, time, and money, that again, who knows about it or who's protecting it, what their background is, what resources they have available, what time they have, kind of like Kai said, that a security system involving cameras and stuff might be really cool and it might be really expensive, but do I really have the time to maintain it? And if I don't, at that point, it kind of becomes worthless, right? And kind of lastly, there's an upside and a downside to everything. And what I'm demonstrating here is I'm willing to bet everybody in the audience, when you start talking about security, you know, securing your house, securing a safe, securing your car, you're very used to thinking through these things, right? You're very used to being able to come up with ideas and then banter around those ideas. And what I'm suggesting is cybersecurity is no different. So at this point, just a few quick, I would call these the non-obvious cybersecurity concepts, but they are, for lack of a better term, considered basic, is that cybersecurity shares a lot of similarities with disaster relief. And I think it's really kind of cool when you look at the history to realizing, you know, some of the forerunners in cybersecurity when this dawned on them and went, wait a minute, we've been approaching cybersecurity from a strictly technical standpoint. We actually have a lot of similarities with disaster relief. Anybody want to take a stab of why that is? I mean, how is cybersecurity like disaster relief or disaster preparedness?
I think because you have to think about it like it's going to happen, not that maybe this will happen. And then also, you know, there's so much information, like really important information that's stored via the internet or like through technology, that if, you know, like water or hurricanes and stuff hit, like what happens to all of that information. So
this is actually one of my favorite parts of the presentation, because most people, they actually do get this. By the time they get here, they go, oh, wait a minute, you're right. That makes sense, because in cybersecurity, I really do have to start thinking about the two basic aspects of that we already addressed, which is this is gonna, or sorry, not the two basic aspects. I guess we didn't really address the aspect that this is going to happen, and to start changing your frame of reference to saying, I can't just sit back, have good security, and think nobody's ever going to try to break in. I have to realize they're going to, and then what am I going to do about it? In disaster relief, they invented the concept of the 4 R's. You'll see this all throughout cybersecurity. Robustness is essentially, you know, like this picture shows, hurricanes coming through, you set up a wall to try to knock it back. How strong is that wall? Redundancy is just having multiples of the same thing, right? If it gets through one barrier, maybe I have a second barrier. Castles were famous for this, right? They had a moat and with alligators, and then they had a giant wall. Resourcefulness, I mean, this does get into, do you have people who are trained, who are thinking about, okay, this hurricane's gonna hit, we don't know what's gonna happen, but when it does, we're gonna start reacting. And rapidity is just the speed with which you can do this. Just like in disaster relief, you don't typically wait for the hurricane to hit before you jump into action, right? You try to build early warning systems to give you an alert or a warning that you're going to have to jump into action. The other thing that disaster relief does, and that is really the benefit to cybersecurity, is planning for failure. It's going to happen. Now, what are you going to do? I also throw on here learning from mistakes, right? You look at the United States, our disaster relief, I think, is some of the best in the world, but a lot of that came from past mistakes. And lastly, I bring up resilience because we like our words in security. Resilience is a little different because at the end of the day, it is about getting stronger under attack. And without going into too much detail, a very simple cybersecurity concept of this would be is you're putting in a password, you put it in wrong 3 times. You can have software very easily go, that doesn't seem good, but it could be normal. You put that password in 10 times. Now all of a sudden I'm going, wait a minute, this is a bigger concern. I can also look back as, how did you screw up that password? Is it onesie-twosie passwords, or are you really shooting from the dark like you're guessing? And if all of a sudden I have all those things as 10 password failures and you're guessing, that is a major alert, and you just build a system that you know, emails or phones or whatever. When it comes to small organizations, though, I really think what resilience should mean to us is learning from mistake and working together. Something bad happens, you can now educate all the others around you. Okay, so like I said, I think that as you're trying to get into a cybersecurity mindset, understanding, you know, I hope what you've seen is, again, you should feel like, hey, I do understand cybersecurity, or yes, I do understand cybersecurity better than I thought. I can do it for my house, I can do it for my car, I can do it for my kids. Yeah, why haven't I been applying this to my technology? And that's where I think, okay, as I used to, like I said, noodle on this, I finally realized, you know why we don't think about cybersecurity, or why we don't think about securing our cyber stuff? And it's all because plug and play technology has basically been built to make it easy for us, to tell us, you don't need to worry about security. Look at how convenient this is. The Internet of Things, you're going to be able to control the world from your cell phone. Everything's talking to everybody. And in fact, I mean, this is what this picture's trying to show you is, hey, the Internet's connecting all these cities. It's connecting all of our cars. And then to me, the ultimate insult is the smartphone and the mobile devices. As I can't take credit for this, but as one of our Idaho Partners for Good members once said, cell phones have really dumbed us down. It's not just because of the cat videos. Once again, it's because, holy smokes, look at everything you can do on a cell phone, right down to doing your banking, which like I said, it makes me giggle. You know, we talk about, okay, if I've got something in a safe, I'm going to figure out some way to also secure that key. But all of a sudden I give somebody a cell phone and they're walking around with that safe in their pocket. And then to make matters worse, they're allowing that safe in their pocket access to random internet networks everywhere. And once you do that, you've got some creep in Russia who's actually able to start attacking your phone and gain access to your safe. So again, you know, kind of the point of this is I think that as a society, we've been a little lazy, but it's not really our fault, because the world's basically told us this, right? You wouldn't be buying all this technology if you thought, if every time you looked at something like a cell phone or a mobile device, or, hey, wow, my fridge can connect to the internet and it can actually order milk when I run out, we wouldn't be buying that if we went, yeah, but that's a security risk. So I hope at this point, you're kind of seeing what it's like to think like a cybersecurity professional. I think you can now identify what things do I need to secure. I mean, at this point, you probably feel like, oh my gosh, everything. That is how I feel. But what can you do? Well, I've made a list, and this is by no means comprehensive. You're not going to be able to do all of them. I don't know anybody, no matter how big, that is, or no organization, no matter how big, that's able to. But at least, you know, it's a start in two ways. So as we go on with the rest of this presentation, you'll notice that my list is color coded. The stuff that's in white, this is the type of stuff that I think any small organization should be able to start doing right now that will help improve their security. You get into the yellows, and that stuff takes a little bit of skill, but I think most people should be able to start putting a little time into it and pull it off. You get into the greens, and now this is the type of stuff where, you know, if you invest enough time, you might be able to learn it if you're interested. You also might know somebody who's a little bit tech savvy that could help you with it. And as we get into the blues, things start getting a little bit harder. These are the type of things that I would think larger organizations would start looking into. So Oh, and then I have the et cetera category, which, you know, that's basically all the unknowns. I always feel like everything's getting worse every day, but everything's also getting better every day. So for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to spend most of the time on what are the things that we can do, that small organizations can do. And then at the end, I'll briefly cover the rest of these. First lesson in resilience, don't freak out. There are a lot of things that you really can do that'll help your security posture. And like I said, most of the rest of this presentation will be talking about that. First thing, policy. I also think that, you know, policy has its two cousins, procedure and process, right? Policy is what we do, procedures are how we do it, and processes are really kind of the step-by-step procedures. A lot of times policies essentially are written up to say that we will have a procedure for something, or to say that we shall. So why is policy important? I'm sure you have some ideas, and I'll be honest, when I first got into cybersecurity and found out how important policy was and started realizing how much it can help us, you know, there was a part of my brain that went, oh man, writing policy is boring. But how does it help us? So some of the ways that policy helps us is it keeps us in compliance, right? And when I say compliance, I do mean that, you know, if you're working in the medical field or the banking field, you're taking credit card numbers, you do know that you have a bunch of rules that you have to follow. So policies help ensure we're doing that. They help hold us accountable. They also help us hold others accountable. Again, I know that a lot of the times we don't like to think about it, but a use authorization document that's essentially, if you've got a small organization and you're letting somebody onto your internet, having a small document where they have to sign that they are aware of what they are allowed to and not allowed to do on the internet can really be very important as far as holding them accountable in case they veer away. It also provides you with liability protection, right? Somebody does something bad on your network and somebody comes after you, you now have a document that says they weren't supposed to do that, and I told them, and here's their signature, and that helps protect you from liability. The other thing, and we'll see this a little bit later, is feedback loops. To me, they're the impetus of being able to improve your process. And then, like I said, lastly, anybody can do it. Back on the liability protection, I'll also make the note that anybody who's worked in HR or had to do difficult things in HR, i.e. fire somebody, also is probably aware that you have a policy, some kind of a use authorization that people have to sign, or these documents they sign really does help you objectively fire someone. So I guess what I would say is policies are a lot more powerful than we give them credit for. So right here, I have a very short list of policies. The acceptable use, password policies, code of conduct. These are the ones that I kind of think everybody should have. And I want to make one big note. I think policies can be intimidating because we think that they have to be comprehensive, and they don't have to be. We think they have to be long. They don't have to be. A policy can be as much as just 2 or 3 sentences. Yeah, software acceptance policy. I spent a little time on this. I point out that not just anybody should be putting software on your stuff. You know, if you have an organization or a corporate computer, you shouldn't allow people to just go in there and download software. A lot of organizations, you're not going to have all the fancy tools that actually prevent that from happening. But what you can have is a nice piece of paper that people using that equipment says, if I download something on this, I'm in trouble. And then, like I said, it does the double thing. It gives you an objective way to deal with them if they do download something bad. And secondly, if what they download is bad enough that it causes harm, you also protect yourself, or you have some liability protection that says, hey, this ain't our policy, and they should have known that.
Hey, Eric, go back to that
yes.
last one. So when you're talking about code of conduct, I immediately think behavior the way you show up in the organization. What do you
Mhm.
mean by this kind of code of conduct?
I actually mean the same thing, meaning
Okay.
that if you think about a how do I say this? You know, you think about a password. I mean, how do I word that? I think of like a password policy or a code of, okay, here's a good code of, kind of a good code of conduct. Policy is that you would have somebody sign that I've read all these other policies, or I'm aware of these other policies. Tailgating, if you've got security badges, is an important one, you know, or any kind of, at some point we're going to talk about the Google Drive stuff. I wouldn't go out telling people that's what you're doing, right? In the sense that I think it can help you, but hey, the less people know about how you're actually managing things, is the better, right? I think anybody who's working for your organization should kind of sign a code of conduct that, hey, I'm going to operate ethically. I'm not going to go around saying stuff that I shouldn't be saying. And a lot of times a code of conduct is just kind of general, but saying, heck, I would put in your code of conduct that I understand that cybersecurity and cyber hygiene is an important aspect to any organization, and I will take that into consideration when I'm using technology. You know what I mean?
Okay.
In a certain sense, that's the way I think of it, is your part of your conduct is that people are aware that they need to behave when it comes to technology and cybersecurity. On this slide, I'll point out, so there, if again, policy does not have to be as intimidating as it sounds. The SANS organization has a whole bunch of templates, right? You can go there, look at them, saying, oh, maybe I should have this one. I will note that it's copyrighted, whereas there's this other security studio source and their policy templates, you know, I would say match similarly, but they're open source, so you don't have to worry about any kind of liability issues that I'm aware of. Yeah, if you want to know more about policy. Password management, security through obscurity. I like saying security through obscurity because a lot of cyber professionals like to say obscurity is not security, and then I like to retort with, well, what do you think a password is? Nonetheless, I think, again, things we can do every single day, get better at passwords. I'm always surprised at how bad some people's passwords are. And how do I know? Because I figured some of them out, or they've just flat out told me and I just shake my head, which, you know, there's 2 violations there. Not only do you have a crappy password, but you shouldn't be sharing it with anyone. Very simple ways to make your passwords better: misspelled words, numbers in place of letters, special characters in place of letters or words. I'm going to say I kind of struggle with these type of passwords because they're basically taking an advantage of one thing, which is that some numbers look similar to letters, and and if you're not really consistent, these are the type of things I forget, or I look at the password, which, you know, I shouldn't be writing this down anyways, but it's still hard for me to figure out where did I screw up. Passphrases, I think, are a really good one, and these things are, I would say, amongst cyber professionals, gaining a lot of traction, a lot of recommendation. I also like passphrases because, as this slide shows, they make me giggle. The first time I was presented with passphrases, the first thing I thought of was Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction, going, "The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men." But as I point out, you can get 3 dang good passwords out of this, right? That are hard to crack. The only caution I would make on passphrases is it really should not be connected to you too closely, in a sense that I really wouldn't pick a quote from my favorite book, because if somebody really wanted to hack me, you know, they would now have something that they could hash. Okay. But at any rate, I really do enjoy the passphrase. I do think it makes can make a lot of people make their ability to improve the protection on their passwords easier, something they can remember. Oh gosh, yeah, passphrases as passwords. I also recommend don't go and use your mission statement. I know everybody was chomping at the bit to use their Idaho Partners for Good mission statement as their passwords, but as a member, you probably should avoid it, no matter how good it is. Passwords, Memory Mansion, or the Mind Palace. This is my personal favorite, but I have to admit, for some people, it's a little hard. This is actually based on a real technique for world memory champions, and it's based on the concept of two factors of how memory works. One is that your brain works on triggers, but your brain is also very good at filtering out common things, right? You remember your child's name because you do it over and over again. However, most things, your brain just memory dumps, right? So the memory palace concept is to kind of create a passphrase that also tells a story. So like this spritz dunks coffee at 6 p.m. was made up as an example for a friend of mine who has a cat named Spritz, and the password was Spritz123, which is just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But as I was pointing out, is that, you know, a password like this would be very hard to guess. It would be very hard to crack with a hashing rig. But for you, you can create a story that it's like, oh yeah, I forget that my cat likes to drink coffee, but it's a silly cat. It drinks coffee at 6 o'clock and it doesn't dunk its donut, it dunks its coffee. Oh, Spritz, what a silly cat. Once you kind of build that story, you'll be surprised that later you're like, wait, what did I make that again? And all of that story creates a trigger for you. So I personally like these ones. They're hard to crack, easier to remember. But I know they don't work for everyone. And that's kind of the point of this thing, long versus short. I think you can argue the pros and the cons of these things. At the end of the day, I would just say do what's best for you and your organization and just try to improve. And lastly, I do point out, is there a policy? Yes, the NIST, which is an organization that publishes I would say guidelines on cybersecurity. They recommend 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, rotate every 3 months, and lock out after 2 attempts. And it's like, yeah, this is a great policy, but most of us who are dealing with passwords, we're not that big where we can actually control lockouts, right? So unfortunately, I think this is a great policy for large organizations, but I think for the average person or the small organization, you're better off going with passphrases or, you know, memory management type stuff. Largely because you're going to be using software where you don't control the rules on the password. Yeah, better passwords, build a plan. As we previously mentioned, maybe have a password policy so everybody in your organization follows it. It'll not just help secure your organization, but hopefully if they use some of these techniques, it'll help secure the rest of their life. Security questions are bogus. I bring this up because most people don't know it. There are organizations, I believe NIST is one of them, that says people, when I say people, I mean organizations, need to stop using security questions. Why are security questions really bad? Well, the problem is that, or as funny as it is, what problem are they trying to solve with a security question? They're trying to give you a backdoor into your account by asking you questions that are really easy for you to remember. But guess what? Those answers are also easy for other people to remember who know you, or it's easy for them to find out through social media. So recommendation is, if you're forced into having to use security questions, to either treat them like another password, meaning make it random and make it hard, or just don't answer it correctly. I give the example of, you know, instead of using your mother's maiden name, maybe the answer you use is your best guess at your grandmother's shoe size. You know, little tangential. You probably could get there if you thought about it, but it's not a direct answer. And it's not something somebody could find from social media or other places. I mean, seriously, things like public domain sources like county records, newspapers, birth certificates, these are all very easy things to find. Multi-factor authentication. This is the concept that multiple things are needed to gain access or entry. This time, it's okay to use your cell phone as being that little, if you use Duo or Google Auth, that's, you know, giving you that rotating password. I think that's fine. In general, MFA, there's this little ditty that it's something you have, something you know, something you are, right? That something you know is your password, something you have is your cell phone or mobile device. Not a lot of devices have something you are, which, right, would be kind of facial recognition or a fingerprint. But at the point, the whole point of it is a hacker can't just go and hack one field. There's multiple vectors to gain access. So I recommend using MFA when you can. I recommend adding MFA to anything you're actually setting up or able to set up. Security updates, I would say update all your things. This includes hardware and software. Your hardware does have firmware. Firmware updates typically do not come out as often as regular software updates, but stay on top of it. As I make a note, there is a policy for this, meaning that it is recommended that you have a software update, or they often call it a patch policy. I do make a note that, I mean, most people know what software updates or security updates are because Windows or Mac OS, right? It just pesters you. What you may not know is that a lot of your common softwares, I think of Adobe, I think of Photoshop, the Adobe PDF Reader, Chrome, video games, and the drivers for your printer often have updates. They're not always security related, but it is recommended that you update these, and it's something that really everybody can do. It's just unfortunate that, you know, some of your software doesn't pester you that there's an update, and you do have to kind of take the time to go out and see if there is one, and you'll apply it. Itemize your cyber assets. And when I say itemize your cyber assets, I mean your hardware, your software, and your cloud services. I know that this is a tedious job, but as we're going to see, what are the benefits of itemizing your security assets? I call this the cybersecurity improvement process. It looks very similar to almost all improvement processes, where it's basically a thing, something happens, there's some review or some analysis, and then we feed that back in, right? Most feedback loop systems kind of look like this. So what I'm basically showing here in this picture is you start with a policy that I'm going to do something. I'm going to have a procedure or process for something. And again, it can be short. Usually this policy is going to affect something, right? That's where assets come in. If I have a list of my assets, I kind of can start figuring out, oh, what policies do I need to have? Or if it comes to a software update policy, which would just basically say, walk through your assets and periodically, right, every 6 months, maybe every year, just go and see if there's an update I need to do on them. Another nice thing is security alerts. And by security alerts, usually the big ones actually do make national news. If you've itemized your assets, you don't have to sit there and think, wait a minute, am I using this thing? You can go back to your list of assets and go, I'm not using this thing. I don't have to worry about this. This is kind of why I think assets, or itemizing your assets, is really important, because it just becomes a very useful tool in your arsenal of keeping yourself protected. But back to this overall improvement process concept. Again, if I've got a policy for passwords, what might happen, or when I say what might happen, periodically you should be reviewing them. And your reviews can either be time-based. Again, every 6 months or 12 months, I'm going to review all of my policies. I'm going to review my password policy. Or maybe your passwords get cracked. Hey, guess what? The fact that I have a password policy, now it's time to review. How did that password get cracked? Do we need to update this policy? Do we need to make start having stricter requirements? I put a big stuff bubble down here. Again, I don't know what all policies you're going to have, but the very fact that I have a policy, and the fact that maybe things happened, good or bad, I now have what you would call a platform to review and provide feedback and improve things, right? Rinse and repeat. Yes.
Hey, Eric, question about what data do you collect when you're documenting your assets?
Oh, that's a really good question, because you're right. You can get you can go from simple to complex. I'll
What's the
just say
basics?
for me, the basics is I would be listing all computers, all mobile devices. Again, anything that connects to the internet. I'd make a list of what that thing is, and then major software. So if you want to have a good security process, you really should be very concerned about what software you put on a thing, right? I'm going to be honest. I know this gets difficult for the layman, but I've learned that I like building computers myself, mainly because I like to put the OEM Windows on it, because you know how you buy a new computer and there's just tons of software on there. When I've had to work with off-the-shelf computers, I will go into Software Manager and just start uninstalling stuff, because all those things are a security risk. I don't know what they are. I think that if you went into your security manager, or your software manager, again, using Windows as an example, if you delete all the stuff you don't know what it is, you would be surprised at how few things you are running. You're probably only running maybe 20 to 30 things. So, when I say, so again, on the software side, I'd be listing all the software you're using on a daily basis. And then I would not add any new software. Or I would say I would add it carefully.
Okay, so I'm going to document the name of the piece of equipment or software. I'm going to name maybe the purchase date.
Okay, yeah, I would put the revision. Right, your software, almost any software I know of that's worth its salt, in the help menu you'll have an about, and it'll tell you what the revision is. So I would have the name of the software. I'd have the revision. I would have, if you're willing to take the time, the list of systems that it's currently on. And yeah, the install date is a good one, and then the review date. When's the last time you updated it? In fact, to make things easier, yeah, sorry.
Nope, I just wanted to capture that.
Eric, what's the big difference between like running an app off of your, or are there any security differences between running an app off of your laptop versus just using like the web-based versions?
That's a good question. The fact that it's on your computer, there can be differences, right? That does create a different vector for attack, because if we'll just say some bad person had the password to get into your computer, they can monkey with the software if they're smart enough. And don't get me wrong, software compilers are getting better at making that hard. But if it's on a website, in some ways, you've done yourself a favor, because the security is now in somebody else's hands. That doesn't, again, the downside of things, that doesn't mean that some bad person hacks into who's ever hosting that. They now can do a lot of damage to a lot of people, but it is, I would say that doing something hosted on a website does present less of a security headache for you, if that makes sense, especially if it's a trusted organization. And I see that I could spend a lot of time on this. That's something to noodle on. And I should say, any other questions? But I do see I need to speed up.
Yep, we've got about 2 minutes.
Yeah, restricted mobile devices, again, not just when you're driving. I would say anytime, just be more thoughtful about it. Don't manage things with your cell phone, routers, firewalls. I really recommend do not do your banking on your phone. Trusted software. The thing is at the end of the day, I love startups and I love the little guy, but large companies are motivated by liability. They're motivated by wanting a large customer base. They're motivated by revenue, and they're motivated by longevity. They don't want a security thing to all of a sudden get bad press and knock them out. So basically they have something to lose. So back to your question, Kai, if I had a choice and I'm really concerned about security, and I have a choice between putting it on my laptop, or if I'm able to run it off the network, I might consider running it off of, a server, because then they can, manage all of that for me. limit software use, or the softwares that you use. Like I was pointing out, if you actually think about it, we're telling you go document all the software you're using. Well, the fewer softwares you use, the fewer attack surfaces you have, meaning places that somebody could do something bad to, the fewer things you have to patch. Being thoughtful about your software can help you out in a lot of ways. Cloud services, this kind of goes back to Kai's point. In a way, using cloud services does, I mean, don't get me wrong, it creates a whole nother attack surface. If I'm putting stuff on the cloud that I don't want people to see, again, somebody hacks that service, I could be in trouble. But at the same token, it's not something I have to worry about. Hey, you hacked my laptop. Oh, well, you're not getting that, right? In some ways, cloud services enable you to let somebody else have the headache and manage the security for you. Google Drive, I bring this up because I think this is something that I know a lot of organizations have used. I've used it myself. We call it I call it the poor man's security enclave. And the thing is that one of the big things is don't be sending security information. Don't be sending sensitive information through email. Don't send passwords through email. But we all know that we're kind of in those spots, especially when we're small, it's difficult to manage. One thing I like to use is set up a Google Drive. You can manage who has access at a folder and a file level, and right, only you and that other person can see it. This is a much better way to pass passwords or sensitive documents, because you're not actually sending something through email. You're just letting somebody know it's there, and then they're authenticated through their email service. Now, don't get me wrong. It also, again, all these upsides and downsides. It has a downside that if I'm managing a lot of passwords or security or documents that are sensitive in Google Drive, you hack one account and now all of a sudden you have access to everything, right? So you probably want to make that account, or have that account, that Gmail account, have a pretty strong password. Another thing you consider is just setting up a single separate Gmail account where it has a really tough password. Put that password in your Mac, what's it called, keychain. And right, the only thing you use that Gmail account for is getting to your Google Drive where you're managing the sensitive information. So in a nutshell, there's things you can make it turn this Google Drive security enclave concept into being more secure, but I still think it's more secure than just sending things through email and then worrying about having to delete it out of your outbox and having to worry about the other person deleting it out of their inbox. Learning your router. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I would just basically say, and this gets into the medium level stuff, is just, you've got the internet coming into your house, coming into your business. You have a router, and your router usually, I've never seen one that doesn't, has a firewall. And with that firewall, you can start restricting IPs. You can start whitelisting computers. I mean, you literally can say the only computers or mobile devices that are allowed on this network are ones that I have to physically go and allow. Taking the time to go learn those things isn't too hard, and it can really help secure you. Locking down your router, I just point this out because people often forget it. Usually your router will come with a default name and password, or a default username for admin privileges. Please change those. Upgrading your firewall, 10 seconds on this. Netgate plus pfSense is actually a cheap way that you can add more protection, including setting up a costless VPN. Do you really need it? And do you really need to protect it? Another thing, highly recommend. A lot of times we spend time and money protecting things that we don't actually need to. So again, once we've decided to be more secure, we also don't want to waste our time, right? Upside downside, I can get crazy on this and I can lock and secure everything, but it also takes convenience, it takes time. So spending time to figure out stuff that you used to think was treasure and realizing it's trash, that can save you a lot of time and money and security. Air gaps, this is a term that cyber professionals are very familiar with, but the layman may not be. Air gaps just basically mean don't connect it to the internet. This is something that the DOJ and the DOD do all the time. They literally have systems with information on it that you cannot physically get there through a network. You have to walk in a room and then you can start typing. Well, the truth is you can start doing this yourself, right? If your organization has sensitive information about people and you're concerned about getting it hacked, there's nothing wrong with putting that on an external hard drive that you only periodically plug in, right? You have to be purposeful about it, but you've now just made it really difficult, at least from a internet standpoint, right? Somebody in Russia isn't going to be able to hack your system and get into it unless it's at that very narrow window. This is where I say time is your friend. Basic security concept is anything I want to protect, well, I don't need it to be online all the time. I know this goes a little counter to, should I use cloud services and stuff? But again, this is where you just kind of have to balance pros and cons. I mean, if I have, again, sensitive information about individuals, I think it's very wise just not to let it on the internet, or restrict the time that it's allowed on the internet. Or, you know, there's nothing wrong with your organization saying, hey, at 2 o'clock on this date, we're going to go review these things. You plug it in, it's available, it disappears later. Very simple security technique. Getting rid of things, I'm just saying, very similar to limiting your software. Physically get rid of old stuff. Ed Vasco likes to say things like, you know, Windows 7 is like Swiss cheese. A lot of these old devices, they're no longer being patched for security. They present a lot of problems. Just getting rid of it can help improve your posture. As previously mentioned, have a plan if you're hacked. What type of a plan should you have? What things do I need to shut down? What passwords do I need to change? And who should be contacted? Going back to our concept of having an asset list. All of a sudden, when you get hacked, if you already know you've got that asset list, you've got something to go review and say, which one of these things have passwords? Which one of these things could somebody have gotten into? I'm going to go change things, right? It reduces that headache. And as far as who should be contacted, again, I feel like you have a major security event. There's already going to be enough fear and panic going around. The fact that, you know who you need to talk to. Again, you should have a policy for this. It kind of takes some of the headache out of it, right? I know who to call, and I know what things to change. Learning from mistake. You know, we like to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I like to say, if it broke, now you know what to fix. Create feedback loops, kind of like our policy. Just go, hey, when bad things happen, let me go review. Do I need to make a policy for this? Is there an existing policy I need to update? And yeah, maybe do I need to go tell somebody again? Working together. I do think for the small to medium-sized organizations, this is one of the best things you can do, is if everybody resolves that, hey, I'm going to improve my security posture, you guys can share policies, you can share mistakes, you can save yourselves a lot of time. And plus, it's nice to have friends. Working together, this slide, not really going to go through these other than to point out that, like, MISP, CIS, NIST, the whole mirror attack framework, a lot of these concepts came from that concept of working together, right? The MISP threat sharing, it's really neat. Organizations, governments, they're all feeding into making these security threads on how, well, they call them security signatures, but it's, hey, did a bad thing happen? What hardware did it happen on? What software did it happen on? How did it happen? Everybody's working together. So it's not just you and your small to medium-sized organization, it's everybody. In the state of Idaho, you have the INL. They have a cyber core section that is basically available to everybody. You've got the Institute for Pervasive Cybersecurity at Boise State that in some ways I consider it's in its infancy, but they're slowly building up knowledge and the ability to help. There's several documents that are kind of in the works to just make it easier and cheaper for all of us to have better cyber hygiene. Yep, get better over time. Stop trusting your technology. Convenience brings with it an associated risk. Questions when over.
Yep. So let's go ahead and Kai, do you have any wrap up for this so we can?
Yep, I just Well, first of all, thank you so much, Eric, for your knowledge, your wealth of knowledge. I think everybody can take away at least something from this presentation and implement it immediately. And so we just wanted to remind you all that we do have another breakthrough series coming up for July and August, and they are already posted on our website. We will be sending out a follow-up email to this presentation, so folks can watch the recording as well, and probably check out a sketch note here shortly as well. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us, and we will also provide Eric's contact information in the follow-up email. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.